Well, he and a friend decided to start their own institute, and it became the Tuskegee Institute. And all these former slaves went there to learn how to farm, and they learned writing and reading and math, but they also learned agriculture. So when I finished reading that essay, it's called "To Struggle for an Education," I was just bawling. I could not believe it. It was like God was saying,
Wow.
Ruth, if this man can do it, right? A
Yeah.
former slave can walk all those miles for a college education. You can do it too. So it was about midnight by that time. I went over to my computer and I wrote an email to my professor.
Welcome to Relatable Wisdom, the podcast where real people share timeless ideas. I'm your host, Wisdom Okonkwo, and in every episode we dive into the philosophies, quotes, points, and life lessons that shape how we live, think, and grow. No matter where you are in life, this show is here to remind you wisdom is everywhere, and it's always relatable most of the times.
Hi, my name is Ruth Douthit, and I'm an artist and an author, a wife and a mom, and a teacher, and all those fun things, and also a podcaster. So it's nice to be here.
Amongst many things.
Yes.
I know the list goes on and on and on and on. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much. It's nice to be here.
Yeah. Yeah, before we started recording, I was talking about your quotes, completion equals success. When you talk about, when you share that quote, completion equals success, when did that idea first really click for you? Not intellectually, but, a deeper understanding, like I haven't, I like to call it an understanding in your bones.
Yes, exactly. Well, for me, when I went to college, college was very important to me. I wanted to finish college. I
Yeah.
would be the first person in my family to finish, but unfortunately, I didn't. I left college early and got married. And so I started receiving all these announcements, these invitations to my friends' graduations
Yeah.
in the mail, and I just felt so empty and lost. I had this feeling hovering over me all the time, like, you never completed college, you never finished.
Yeah.
And so no matter what I did, no matter what successes I had, I always felt incomplete because I never finished college. So when I was about 38, I finally went back to school and I worked so hard. I had a little boy at home, my husband, and I was working as a janitor, trying to make bills, pay the bills, and I was taking a full-time load. It was so hard. I was an art major, so I had to buy all these art supplies and
Yeah.
everything. But it was just a passion of mine. And I wanted to quit because I was so exhausted. I'd be at school from 8 in the morning till sometimes 11:30 at night, eating out of a vending machine, being in the computer lab. I was just missing my son and my husband. Our son was little, and I just wanted to quit. I thought, this is not worth it. I was sitting at my dining room table just crying because I missed my son so much. And I thought, why am I doing this? This is so crazy, all for a piece of paper, that I hang on my wall. This is so dumb. So I thought, that's it. I'm going to quit, and tomorrow I'll go look for a full-time job. And we were living in an apartment. We hardly had any money. And I thought, yes, I'll get a full-time job and we'll have money again. Yay! But first, I wanted to complete my last homework assignment. And so I did. I
Uh,
opened up the folder, and the assignment was called, I had to read an essay for an, I'm sorry, an essay for higher education, and it was by Booker T. Washington, who in the United States was a very famous man. He was a former slave, and he became a brilliant teacher in the college system. And as I read this essay about this young man who was freed from slavery at age 9, and he went to work in the coal mines, and started to hear rumors about college, that there was a college in Virginia that allowed former slaves to go to school. And he just couldn't believe it. So all of his friends gathered money, and he worked for a white woman at that time, a very rich white woman, and she even gave him some money. And he got a train ticket, and he took the train to Virginia, but his money ran out. So he got kicked off the train, and he had to walk almost 500 miles to this school. And because of the color of his skin, he couldn't eat in restaurants and he couldn't sleep in hotels. He had to sleep on the ground. And so I'm reading this essay and I'm thinking, oh my gosh, here I am complaining and
yeah.
crying because I'm tired, right, of school. And this man walked all these miles. When he walked into the institute, they couldn't believe him. He was all dirty, and he didn't look very good. And he said, I want to go to school here. And so the dean of students asked him, well, do you have any money? And he said, no. He goes, well, what can you do? He said, I can sweep the floors, because that's what he did for the white woman back in West Virginia.
Yeah.
So they gave him a broom and he swept the floors just beautifully. And so they gave him a job as the janitor. And I was a
Yeah.
janitor, right? They gave him
Yeah.
a job as a janitor and that paid for his tuition. And he went to school. He went to college, a former slave. He was only about 16 years old. When he graduated, he stayed there to get his master's degree, and then they asked him to teach there. So here he was, like 19, 20 years old, and he was a teacher at this institute. Well, he and a friend decided to start their own institute, and it became the Tuskegee Institute. And all these former slaves went there to learn how to farm, and they learned writing and reading and math, but they also learned agriculture. So when I finished reading that essay, it's called "To Struggle for an Education," I was just bawling. I could not believe it. It was like God was saying,
Wow.
Ruth, if this man can do it, right? A
Yeah.
former slave can walk all those miles for a college education. You can do it too. So it was about midnight by that time. I went over to my computer and I wrote an email to my professor. And I said, Professor, I'm writing you this email to thank you for this assignment because it changed my life. I was almost going to quit college because I'm so tired and we have no money. We live in an apartment and I want to get a house. But after hearing about what Booker T. Washington went through to have an education, I'm not going to quit. I'm going to stay the course. And so I thanked him for that assignment and I hit send. And not 5 minutes later, he wrote back. And I thought, what? He's up at midnight? I couldn't believe it. And he said, Ruth, thank you so much for this email because I too was about to quit. And I thought, what? You're kidding
Wow.
me.
What is happening?
Yeah. He said, I was just so tired of grading all these essays. It seemed like none of the students cared. You know, I was giving all these low grades because they just put any effort into my assignments. He said, and then I got your email and
Yeah.
it changed my life. He said, I just want you to know that here we are encouraging one another. He said, don't give up. He said, an education is so important. He said, you are teaching your son such an important lesson. And he said, in a house, you'll get a house. He goes, I didn't get my first house till I was 50. He said, don't worry, all that will come to you. He said, but stay with it. And I did. And I graduated with honors. And I was the first person in my family to have a college education. So to me, that is down in my bones. Completion equals success. So after I got that, and my professor was the one that handed me my diploma. And once I got that diploma, it's on my wall now. I'm looking at it. It just became my definition of success: completion. I complete my degree, I complete marathons, I complete books, I complete podcast episodes. To me, that's the definition of success is completion.
Other than the college, going back to school, what other projects? When I say completion, when you talk about the school, what other projects come to mind that you're proud that you completed it?
Mm. Well, I think my first book, because I never really thought of myself as a writer. I was always an artist. But to finish a book it's a lot of work. It took me 4 years to write that book and to type the end. I
Yeah.
realized not everybody does that. And so many authors out there, so many writers give up. And I'm just telling you, don't give up. Keep going. Someone out there needs to read your story, whether it's a romance or a fantasy about dragons like I write, or a comedy. There's someone out there who needs to have joy, and you can do that. You can bring joy to someone's life just by writing your story. So keep going. Not everybody writes a book. A lot of people quit along the way. So if you can get to that point where you type the end, you've done what so many people have never done before. So you can be proud of that. So yeah, that was something that was really important to me. And even my dad read it. And he wasn't a reader. He just read the newspaper. But when my dad read it and he said that he really liked it, that meant the world to me. So keep going. I know it's difficult, but you can do it.
Oh, wow. I'm curious, writing the book, what were some of the things that almost stopped you from completing the book?
Oh, yeah. Sometimes when you start off, you have this idea in your head, but to take it from your head and put it down on a computer page, it's so tricky. And what made me want to quit was when I handed it to my editor. He was really rough. He would tell you if it was awful, and he did many times, and that just broke my heart. But when I started to realize
Uh,
he wasn't doing it to be mean, he was doing it to help me be a better writer. He could see the potential, and so he was saying, fix this, fix that, fix this. And when I did it, I realized, you know what? Yeah, it is a much better story because of him. So at first, it hurt. There were many times when I would cry because he was brutal. But I had to just remember why he's doing it. He's not doing it to be mean. He's doing it to help me write the best story that I could write. So yeah, I think the editing process was the hardest. And then just being patient, I signed the contract in 2009, and I wasn't holding the book in my hand until 2011. So it took 2 years of waiting and waiting and waiting. It's so hard. You have to be so patient. So while I waited, I wrote another book and then another book. So that's what you have to do. You have to just keep writing. Otherwise, you'll just go crazy waiting for that book to get there. So those are the things that made me want to quit. But now I realize it's part of the process. You have to keep going. And while you're waiting, you have to just write the next book.
Let's take a quick pause. If you're enjoying this conversation and want more thought-provoking ideas straight to your inbox, join the Relatable Wisdom email list. It's free, quick, and filled with bite-sized insights, inspiring quotes, and behind-the-scenes reflections from our guests. Just head to relatablewisdom.com/join. That is relatablewisdom.com/join, or tap the link in the show notes. And hey, subscribing to the podcast helps more than you think, and it's free. So if you haven't already, hit that follow button wherever you're listening. All right, let's get back to the conversation.
I'm curious, why do you think finishing something is so important, in a world obsessed with outcome?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think because we're made in the image of God and God finished, He created and then He rested. And when Jesus was on the cross, He said, "It is finished." And I think because we were made in His image, we long to have that completion. And when it doesn't happen, it just leaves us feeling empty. I've had friends who were pregnant and their babies died and they had to give birth to a baby who died.
Oh,
And
yeah.
there's just that feeling of lack of completion. They went through so much to have this child, and then the child didn't make it. And I think it's just in our hearts, it's in our bodies, or like you said, in our bones, to start something and finish it, whether it's baking a cake, writing a book, remodeling a house, running a marathon. It just means something when you cross that finish line, when you say, "I'm finished." It just has that special meaning.
I'm curious, right? Did you ever abandon projects in the past because they didn't seem big enough to matter?
Oh, yeah. There was a book that I started years ago. I think it was around 2015. And it was a it was a daughter and father story. And they were not getting along. And there were some issues between them that were never reconciled. And I wrote the whole book and I gave it to someone to read, and they gave me some ways to fix it because it had some problems. So I redid it and wrote it again. And then in 2017, I handed it to an agent and she said, "Yeah, I like it, but fix this, 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 this." So I went back and I looked at it and I thought, it's just not working. It's just not working for me. So I'm going to put it aside because it was about this father and this daughter, and the father dies, and there was all this unfinished business between the daughter and the father. And so I thought, what, I'm just going to set it aside and write some other books, and then I'll come back to it. Well, since then, my own father died. And blessedly,
Sorry to hear that.
oh, thank you. We had a wonderful relationship. So when we died, there was nothing, ill between us. Everything was fine. But to the thought of going back and writing a book about a father and a daughter, I just couldn't do it. So that's probably the most difficult project I've ever had to abandon. I really wanted to write it. I think it could help some people out there, the message of the story, but I'm just not ready to pick it up yet. I think it'll be too hard because my own dad's gone, you know. So, yeah.
Uh,
Yeah. But one day I will.
yeah, yeah, we'll see. Well, how do you personally deal with the urge to quit when the excitement wears off?
Yeah, that's kind of how it was when I went back to school. I was so excited to be back in college. Yay! But, it wears off quickly because of the work. It's the same thing with an art project or with a writing project. And what you have to do is you have to ask yourself why. Why are you doing this? If you're writing a book because you want to make money, or you're doing a podcast because you want to
Yeah,
make a lot of money, well, when it doesn't happen or when something goes wrong, like I have with many stories, then you're going to quit if that's your only motivation is to make money, right? That extrinsic motivation. So you have to go deep and you have to ask yourself why. Why do you want to write this story? Why do you want to be an author? Why do you want to be a podcaster? Why do you want to go back to school? If you have a deeper intrinsic motivation, then the times go hard, when it gets hard and you want to quit, you'll keep going. Something inside of you will motivate you to work through the difficulties and keep going. So, yeah, the why is very important. And I always advise people out there, ask yourself, be honest. Be honest with yourself. If it is just to make money, that's fine. But I can tell you, it's not going to happen for a long, long time. So be prepared for that, right? But if you are doing it because you feel like your story is going to help someone or it's going to, really resonate with readers, if there's just that one person out there who will get so much from your story or your artwork or your podcast, then definitely keep going. Keep going.
looking back now, right? There's so many projects
Uh-huh.
you've completed. How has redefining success to completion is success changed how you live day to day?
Yeah, for me, it does drive me more. It has changed my why because at first I did want the big publishing contract. I wanted the agent, I wanted the readers. But when none of that happened, I had to really step back and think, why am I doing this? And completion has a lot to do with it. When I start a project, I want to finish it because that just means so much to me. Otherwise, it leaves me empty. When I start a marathon, it hurts. It hurts halfway through, but I know I have to keep going. And if I have to walk, then I walk for a little while. But the idea, the visualization of me crossing the finish line is what keeps me going. So if someone out there is really struggling and thinking, my definition of success has changed, that's okay. It does over time, it really does. But as long as you can stay motivated, if you're changing your definition, then you have to stay motivated.
What became lighter in your life once success stopped being about prestige, money, fame, and all those things, and it became just a question of completing what I
Oh,
started?
that's a great question. I started having fun. Writing can be a lot of work, but when I stopped caring about all that stuff, it became, like you said, lighter. It became fun. You know, I have a story and now I know how to write a book and giving it to my editor. I don't stress. I just go on to the next project. Or I like doing coloring books now for kids because it's fun. So for me, over the years, I think more projects have become more fun, more entertaining for me, and that keeps me going. I don't have that intimidation, of ooh, it's gonna hurt, it's gonna hurt. So yeah, if your passion like that can also be fun for you, then yeah, that makes it a lot easier to get through those difficult times.
Yeah, I think one would say that being someone who has completed a lot of projects, it kind of gives you credibility when the
Yeah,
resistance speaks. So how do I explain something? So it gives you proof that you
yeah,
know what you're doing. So even times when you feel like, oh, what am I doing? Like, oh yeah, I started, I went back to college, amongst many other things. I'm just saying the self-talk. We're like,
Hmm.
oh, yeah, right.
That's
Rather
true.
than
Oh my
I
goodness.
never, I
I
never
love
complete what I
that.
start.
Yeah, I love that. I'm glad you said that because it really does. I get imposter syndrome, and there are so many times when I don't feel like a success. And then my friend will remind me, Ruth, you're about to publish your 26th book.
Oh,
You have readers who really want to read your next story. You have listeners for your podcast. I think you're a success. And God will sometimes give me a little pat on the back. And, a book I released at Christmas became a bestseller and things like that, where he just says, keep going, pal, keep going. And that helps you get through the writer's block or get through the negative comments that your own mind is telling you. So, yeah, there are little tricks of the trade that help you. Social media is great. I love it, but it can really hinder you and keep you from going forward. You start to do the comparison. How come I don't have as many sales or reviews as she has, or her book is doing better than mine. And sometimes I just have to walk away from social media because it can just rob you of so much joy. So walk away if you need to and just write the book, write the story, paint the picture, complete the project that you're working on, and walk away from all that noise if you have to.
if someone is listening right now and feels behind in life, what would you want them to remember?
It's never too late. I went back to school at age 38. I didn't start teaching till age 45. I didn't start running marathons till age 40. I ran my last marathon at age 57, and I'm still hoping to run some more. I didn't start writing till in my 40s. So it's never too late. You can always be learning. You're not the best at everything. That's something I had to remind myself as an artist. People are like, "Oh, you're so talented and everything," but I always know there's someone better out there. That's why I get on Pinterest and I see all these artists out there, and I'm like, "Wow, I am nothing compared to those people." So always be learning. Always be trying to improve. Because you haven't reached greatness yet. That's okay. We still have plenty of time. Self improvement, always be willing to learn more. Podcasts like this one are so helpful. They're encouraging you if you get down on yourself, right? If you get down on life, these kinds of podcasts are so helpful. So, yeah, don't be down on life. You have a lot of time. Don't give up just because you've reached a certain age. I didn't. I could have, but I didn't. And I'm so glad I didn't.
Yeah, wow. Thank you for sharing that quote. Your latest book is called.
I released one at Christmas called Murder at Christmas Tree Village. And then I'm working on another romantic suspense that will come out in April. And that one's called A Shadow of Hope. And then I have another romantic suspense coming out in the summer. So, yeah, always busy, always writing.
Okay. And how can listeners learn more about the books and the works that
Oh,
you do and
yeah.
also connect with you?
Thank you. Yeah, head over to my website, artbyruth.com, and you'll learn all about me. You'll get to see my artwork there, my coloring books, and you'll also get to see my books for middle grade readers and adults. And I even have a nonfiction prayer journal there. And you can listen to my podcast there as well and sign up for my newsletter, and you'll get a free downloadable copy of a short story so you can get a sample of my writing style.
Oh, I'll put the links in the description so the listeners
Thank
can
you.
click and go directly to the site. Thank you so much, Ruth.
Okay,
It's been a pleasure
my
chatting with
pleasure.
you.
Thank you so much. It's been an honor to join you.
Yeah. Uh,
You've been listening to Relatable Wisdom, and I've been your host, Wisdom Okonkwo. You've been listening to the podcast where every story, quote, and insight helps you see life a little differently. If you enjoyed today's episode, follow the show on your favorite podcast app and share it with someone who would love the conversation. For more inspiring voices and timeless wisdom, visit relatablewisdom.com. Until next time, keep living, learning, and collecting wisdom that matters most to you.